Welcome to the Real Estate PB&J Hour on Money Talk 1310 and 100.9 FM. Rosenwomble Realtor Paul Fuqua is here to share market facts, the fundamentals of selling, buying, owning, and improving your home, plus interesting experts. Now, here is Paul.
Well, thank you very much, Dino, for the nice and kind invitation. I hope everybody's battening down the hatches in preparation for the rain we're going to have this weekend. For some reason, the past few weeks, all I've been able to talk about at the opening of this show is rain. And unfortunately, we've got 3 days of it, and actually it extends all the way into next week, from what I understand. So we were going to do a lot of lawn work. Fortunately, I'm not going to have to do that. I'm going to be able to kick back and watch some football this weekend. I'm joined today by the inimitable broker par excellence, Kim Pimento of Rosenwomble Realty.
Hi, Paul. Thank you very much.
Nice to see you here. And my good friend and colleague, Bob Freck. Now, last week we had a call in, and it was Bob Freck. He couldn't stay away.
But now he came in person.
I figured, all right, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put him on the show again, because it's always good for a laugh, and we can always enjoy one another.
They have to make you guys think a little bit.
Well,
yes.
You don't want to do that. The smell of wood burning will ruin us in the studio when I think. Anyway, today we're going to continue discussing why you should use a realtor, and especially one that's experienced and has a little bit of, he's no longer wet behind the ears, or she's no longer wet behind the ears, in the buying of a property. Last week we spent a considerable amount of time discussing what a seller would object to and how to answer it as a real estate agent. And this week we're going to concentrate on the advantages of using a buyer's agent, or employing the buyer's agent in the process. As always, I like to tell you that this show is designed to be relaxed. It's designed to touch on the fundamentals of real estate because, in large part, for most of us, the home that we occupy is one of the largest investments we'll ever make in our lives, and there are ways to protect ourselves in that process. I've been in this business for 25 years. Bob has been there that long, and of course, Kim is relatively fresh to the
18 years.
So there's quite a bit of experience here, and we're proud and that we're able to answer questions. And we are full-time realtors. We are involved in the day-to-day activities, and that's how we make our livings. Now, our purpose is to discuss the fundamentals of real estate. And if you'd like to call in, please do. It's 757-497-1310. I'll repeat it, 757-497-1310. And you can ask a question of me or Kim or Bob. We may not be able to answer it immediately, but collectively, I think we can kind of work our way through any question you may pose. And if you have any questions of me you'd like to ask offline, you can email me at psfuqua@aol.com. And we continue to make this show as relaxed as possible. We want to be able to offer our opinions and relate the experiences we've had in selling or buying homes. I think, Bob, between the three of us, how many hundreds of people have we dealt with over the past 25 years? And Kim?
A lot.
And a big range.
Yeah.
And then not, first-time home buyers,
investors,
empty nesters, people that that are have in-laws coming back in with them, right. and
how many
the multi-generational
children of clients have you had as clients?
Well, if you've not done a good job for mom and dad, you've had zero.
Well,
okay.
Now I've had a large number.
I've had some children.
But see, Bob he fessed up, didn't he?
You do a good job.
Good.
Listen, that's probably one of the biggest compliments you can get is when mom and dad refer their children to you.
Right.
Because if you didn't do above and beyond for mom and dad, you're never going to get that phone call and get the kids.
Right.
Or vice versa. I've had that happen.
Have you really?
Have the children refer the parent
when
the parent moved to town?
Well, yeah, no, I've had that, yeah. Very recently. That was, anyway. Okay.
They weren't really children, I guess. They were buying houses.
Yeah, well, they're
So you never know. You got one client out there, buyer or seller. You do the best you can for them because you never know where it's going to go
referrals
to.
are the best, too. They're the best kind of clients because they already kind of like you and know you a little bit from the other person.
I know I took a listing, visited a house. I had sold this, represented these folks as buyers 7 or 8 years ago, and they want to sell the house now because he's changed, a job change. And actually, I sold them this house because the house they were in, they'd been renting from a family, and that family member wanted to sell it, so I sold it for that family. And it just, all the permutations of relationships in a family happened on this one transaction, and it turned out to be a very enjoyable experience. And we'll be bringing that house on
you did
the
it right
market.
the first time around.
I think I did.
Yeah.
I hope I did.
Yes.
I worked as hard as I could.
Sure.
Anyway, all right. Market forces, they're dynamic. We always like to take this part of the show and report on what's happening nationally and then what's happening locally in terms of houses sold, houses on the market, anything of interest. Kim, you're our national expert. What's going on? Oh, give us the interest rates first.
You're going to love these.
Okay.
All right. Non-conforming conventional, 6.25% with 1 point.
That's gone.
And non-conforming is what price range? Where are we getting at?
That's the jumbo.
That's a jumbo.
It's a jumbo. So
You're
VA's up to right now.
VA doesn't count.
No, but VA is up to like 700. I mean,
no, it's unlimited.
Yeah, it's amazing and stuff. So
you
we're
could buy
talking
$1 million house, zero in.
Yeah, we're talking a big number on non-conforming
Yeah,
loans.
wait till you hear this
Yes.
one.
Right.
Conforming 30-year, which that means a $715,000 or lower, is for conforming conventional. 6.5% with 2 points.
Wow. And those 2 points, those 2 points is a big chunk of money.
It's 1% of the loan amount.
Like 700,000, right? Which means it's a conforming, and you're going to take a loan at 600,000, so it's $12,000
out of your pocket,
costs.
and top of other closing
in addition
costs.
to all your closing costs
and your down payment.
Yes, that's a big number.
Yep, so this one's good. Conforming investment with the 25% down payment is invest on 10 years of reserves, and you also have a credit score of 740 or more. It's 7.125% with 2.875 points.
So investors, bring your wallet. Bring your cash.
wallet.
And I don't know any investors that I
proof of
represent.
savings.
I don't have any investors that I represent that don't pay cash.
Well, right, because those kind of numbers, I mean, the credit score, just the credit score itself, and having to have those kind of, to get a 7% plus interest, I mean, that's wild.
I have an investor that probably has a terrible credit score because for 30 years he has paid cash for everything.
Yeah, no credit.
He's never bought a car for anything other than cash. He's never bought a house. He's never bought property. He's never invested. Any loans that he has taken out have always been short-term personal loans that he's satisfied within a 60-day time frame.
Those folks are rare. I mean, when you think about it and stuff, but point being, these are some pretty high numbers compared to what, 6 months ago?
Go back to 2008.
And but what's happening is now you're getting the hard money lenders, private lenders that are coming in because they can see that they can charge 5.5%, which was usurious 8 months ago, and now they can be doing 5.5 to 6%.
Hard lenders.
They're hard money lenders, but realize that they're going to control you. They're very difficult to deal with.
Okay, the next one, FHA. 6.25% with 1.875 points. Mm-hmm. And this is the winner of the day. VA, 6.625% with 1.75 points.
So if you had a buyer out there that had an offer in a ratified contract and the lender hadn't locked them in yet, these interest rates, the way they've been jumping up, and as much as they've been jumping up, could very easily have bounced that buyer out of the contract and made it unable for the buyer to qualify for the loan.
Yep. I think for every $1,000 increase on a home, you lose about 3,500 buyers.
That's every 1,000? Mm-hmm. Really? Huh. Yeah, that's got to be a national statistic because we don't have 3,500 buyers in this area. I
don't think we have 3,500 listings, do we?
Yeah, we do.
3,500 households.
We're not too far from it.
Okay. Is there anything else in the national
That's
news?
what yesterday.
We're out of interest rates.
I know.
Folks, look, we've said this before. We're going to say it again. If you need to, or you want to buy a house, it is not the end of the world. It just means that your pricing is going to drop. You want to buy at something that's comfortable. And lenders will work with you. Lenders make their living by selling you money. It's just like the grocery store selling you lettuce. It's a deal that puts money in their pockets. They can't go home without a paycheck, and so they and their companies will do what they can to help you get into a house.
And they'll come up with hopefully reasonable programs. Now, unlike the boom that happened back in '98 and stuff, which just killed the economy when it finally collapsed.
We have too many protections in place now for that.
Yes,
that's not going to happen.
Correct.
as long as the economy does not totally tank, and I don't think this economy ever will. We are a very strong nation economically, and we lead the world in innovation and in inventiveness. We are not the productive company we once were, or country we once were in terms of.
We'll get to that in a little bit later in this broadcast, right? About getting supplies and getting the supplies in to build the houses.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I just have a few stats, but these aren't national. They're from the Hurrah report that came out about August. We just said that I'll just go quickly because I know you've got the stats, the better stats for the area. Pending sales are down significantly from a year ago, down a negative or minus 56.7%.
Minus half of what it was, more than half the level of sales of a year ago.
Right, and prices are rising, but the pace has slowed in the Hampton Roads area. At $320,000, the median sales price in the region rose by $10,000 in August from the last year, a 3.2% gain. So, and the largest growth, I thought this was kind of funny. The largest growth in price growth in this month was Southampton County, with a plus 23%. Portsmouth.
That's because they probably sold 2 farms out there.
The land out there. People like the land.
Well, people are moving out. This farm to table is catching on.
I will tell a quick story of myself. Early on in my career, I'd moved here from Washington, D.C. I grew up in the city where my yard was about a yard wide. It was the grass that existed between the sidewalk and the curb. And then on the side of the house, because there are lot lines, there was a pathway down one side. Down the other, there was a side yard that was equivalent to that. We lived at 34th and Garfield. And I grew up in the city. I rode my bike everywhere and the buses, and I never really saw, other than the National Mall and other places, any large expanse of grass. Well, I moved here, and early on, I had an opportunity to.
Did you own a lawnmower when you lived up there?
No.
Oh, he had to cut it with,
think about it.
His parents made him cut it with scissors.
You're out there with a pair of hand clippers.
Paul cut the grass.
No, we just let it die.
Yes, sir.
We had all the kids.
That's right.
We never knew what grass was. It was like mud. Anyway, so this man lives in Franklin, and he had spent his career buying land that after farmers failed during October. That's when all the tax sales in the county happen out there. And he had always had a plentiful source of money. He ran the paper making machine. Long story short, I go to pick him up, and we're going to go out and look at 55 acres he wants me to bring on the market. And we're driving through these fields, and it snowed out here in Southampton County. This is amazing. Look at all this white stuff. He says, "You really did grow up in the city?" I said, "Yeah, I did." He says, "That's not snow, that's cotton." So I tell that story myself, and I admit it. I've been on a farm once in my life. I've actually patted cows and stuff like that. So coming to this area and being able to drive into Pungo and being able to drive into Carolina and going out to the Southampton County, it's a joy. I enjoy.
You don't have to go far around here to be out in the country, which is amazing.
It's
an amazing
anyway,
place.
I'm sorry. That's my story.
Amazing place to live, Hampton Roads.
That's Southampton County.
Nice.
Me and cotton and snow. I sold almost 300 acres.
And you went back out there the next day with your shovel, right?
No, I did not. I was chagrined.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So the other 2 cities in the area that had a growth in August was Portsmouth and Suffolk. I thought that was kind of interesting. And the active listings were down for August, as we all know, and they were down but only 148 fewer listings, about a negative 44.3%. So that's not bad.
No, and that's interesting, those last couple of statistics, because back during the turn of the century boom and stuff, you saw
13,000
a lot of properties out in Suffolk, and small properties, monster properties on the water, and people flocking out to Suffolk. That place just boomed. If you haven't been out to Suffolk in the last 20 years, you would never recognize it. We didn't have an office out there, Rosenwamble.
Right.
We had an office out there during that boom because people were heading out there. So, pricing was a little better out there. You get more for your money. Portsmouth,
same
get
thing
more
with
for your
Chesapeake.
money.
Yeah, that Harborview area is just changed amazingly.
Yeah, now Chesapeake, it kind of tends to stay expensive because it's, you get down, you get land in Chesapeake, and the prices start jumping up when you're looking at 3 acres.
There was a time when Chesapeake was considered a great value.
Yes.
And then there was a time frame, I want to say it's about 7 or 8 years ago, when the numbers flopped or flipped. Chesapeake houses consistently were the same size, resale, were more expensive than the beach. And it may well have been neighborhood driven more so than anything else. But locally, there were, as of yesterday, September 22nd, September 26th. Today was what, the 28th?
The
27th. Whatever day it is.
Today's the 29th.
But yesterday, there were 4,023 active residential listings, of which 3,311 are single family and 720 were attached. Now, last week our counts were 4,034 for a total, 3,295 single families and 719 attached. So there is a slight decrease, less than 0.5%, in total listings on a week-to-week comparison. The number of properties actually available, and that's the key element, is today 3,092. That's a huge increase of 1% over last week. And the number of actual sales closed last week was 516. Total count for September thus far is 1,921. August was 2,939. July was 2,826. June, 3,984, May, 3,339, and April, 3,706. Now, we're going to have to take a break. If you would like to hear any more of these statistics, please give me a call at 757-497-1310. This is the Real Estate PB&J Hour with Paul Fuqua, Kim Pimento, and Bob Freck, streaming live on MoneyTalk1310.com or 1310 AM 100.9 FM. We'll be right back to discuss the objections folks have to using a realtor when buying a home. See you in a minute.
Now back to the Real Estate PB&J Hour on Money Talk 1310 and 100.9 FM. Rosenwamble Realtor Paul Fuqua gives you the fundamentals of real estate selling, buying, owning, and improving your home.
Well, welcome back. Happy to hope you know that who you're listening to. It's Paul Fuqua, Bob Freck, and Kim Pimento. We are here at 1310 AM, 100.9 FM, or MoneyTalk1310.com to discuss elements of real estate and how it impacts you as a buyer or seller. And we're going to talk now basically about, first, very quickly do an overview of what we discussed last week. I'm going to read some of these things, Kim, and if you'll jump in, and Bob, you had a couple questions. These were issues we discussed, whether the doom and gloom of many reports of the real estate market have impacted our practices appreciably. I think there's a yes to that generally.
Yes.
Okay. Where do we see the immediate impact of the increases in interest rates and the overall cost of living? Chime right in here, folks. First-time home buyers are really heavily impacted, and we've also seen a slowdown in the increase of prices, and we've seen readjustments away from aggressive pricing. Correct?
And we've seen in certain price ranges properties. 6 months, a year ago, you put a townhouse in Greenbrier on the market, and you had some of these things now are sitting a little bit longer because the buyers who would have been qualified a year ago or half a year ago, now it's out of their price range, and, and the prices haven't adjusted on these properties.
But the amazing thing is, I think our days on market time, which is from listing to ratified contingency-free contract, is not increased appreciably. It's like 16 days.
Yeah.
So, that's an amazing amount of time.
Yeah, most of our homes sell. 81% of our homes sell in less than 30 days.
Right. So,
which is a good sign for Hampton Roads home buyers and sellers.
We discussed what our feelings are about the next 3 months in the first part of 2023. I think we agreed that we're going to see a slowdown in the rate of appreciation in values. We're going to see a fairly consistent flow of buyers. We just don't have the inventory, so that lack of supply will impact the pricing structure.
And sellers are going to have to help buyers get into these homes, especially with those points.
Yeah,
that is coming back.
Closing costs
sellers
are coming back.
Starting to pay some closing costs to help the buyer out minimize the impact on their pocketbook.
And one thing I think that we need to clear up with the VA loan is, you have a funding fee that's rolled into your loan, which can be 1.5 up to 3.
It's 2.5, or is it 2% and 3.5 if it's the second time usage, or is it now 2.5%?
It's either 2 or 2. It used to be 1.5, and it's gone up. But that is separate from closing costs. And I have had a lot of people think that the VA rolls their closing costs into their loan, and that is really not allowed by lenders. That's not happened. So a VA does still have closing costs and a funding fee, which is their form of mortgage insurance.
Right, and that funding fee basically just adds to the mortgage. If you buy a $100,000 house,
it's $102,000.
You start out with your loan at $102,000.
Right.
So you're already kind of upside down, but no down payment. Right. So that's a trade-off for a VA buyer. And
it's important because one of the issues we discussed last week is that Hampton Roads, because of the military presence and in military and industrial presence surrounding it, and the budgeted monies there, we are different from a great many other areas of the country because we have a constant flow of people who need housing, and they have a source of funding. It's VA. Plus, I think. The percentage is 90% of the homes that are purchased with loans in this area are guaranteed by either FHA or VA, or am I too high at 90%?
Especially on first-time home buyers and stuff.
I don't think the last couple of years probably was that high. We had a lot of cash deals.
Yeah. Well, I think other areas of the country that are not as pleasant place to live as this place has drawn people out of those. I can remember, again, going back to the turn of the century when we had people coming out of Long Island and Massachusetts and Rhode Island and Connecticut who were looking for a place with seasons and an appreciably less expensive housing market. And we still occupy that. I mean, I don't know. The average price in New York City is now well in excess of $1.1 million. Average price? No, minimum price. I beg your pardon. Minimum price. Anyway, all right. Should prospective buyers shy away from purchasing a house at this time? We came to the conclusion that you can, if you wish, if you're afraid of the interest rates. But if you work closely with a good lender, you'll be able to handle what's out there. You may not be able to buy that $400,000 house you'd wanted, but it could be now a $325,000 house, and there's an adjustment in the market to accommodate that. Remember?
Right. I think you have to factor in if you get your closing costs paid and some other things like that. You're not getting that low interest rate, but you're getting some money that you wouldn't have not taken out of your pocket that would have been taken out of your pocket, a year ago or even 6 months ago.
I think a lot has to do with what they're planning. Are they going to be in the area for 3 to 5 years? Is it going to be short time here in Hampton Roads? But
you're not going to break even if you're selling it within 2 or 3 years.
Correct.
Plain and simple. It just doesn't happen.
If you look at the buyers who 6 months ago went, I'm going to wait for the interest rates to come back down. How's that work? That's kind of backfired. So when you're ready to buy, you do your best you can with what's on the market, with what you can afford on your monthly mortgage payments, and you work with a good qualified lender and realtor.
You're segueing right into where the major area we want to concentrate. We've got a half an hour of the show left, and we wanted to discuss several things, but the key one was, what's the advantage to a buyer of using a qualified, experienced agent as his buyer's agent. Kim, give me a reason why I can counter the objection that I've heard from home buyers. I'll pay more for this house because the seller has to pay your commission. Is there validity to that?
No, because, I think that if you're an experienced buyer, maybe you could feel like that and navigate through the process if you've had some experience. But first-time home buyer, there is so many ins and outs of the contract that I think that you would be, wise to use an agent.
Now, do you think that's you use the term first-time home buyer, and I'm going to tell you that I think the average time a person takes from buying one house to buying the next is 7 years. That's an average.
Yes.
So in 7 years,
even though this is going to be their last house they ever buy. Yes. In 7 years, they're off to somewhere else. 7 years is the average, and that may be a national.
I think it's gone up to like 10.
Is it 10? Mm-hmm. Okay. In 10 years, how many houses has a buyer bought?
One.
He bought one. Okay.
Yeah, and
how many houses have we as realtors handled? Right. Representing,
hopefully more than one.
I'd be
shouldn't be a realtor.
I'd be digging a ditch. Right, I wouldn't be a realtor.
No, I agree with you, Paul. And I think what we do is we assume that just because sometimes when I have assumed that just because someone was maybe highly educated and they'd bought a couple homes that they knew more, when really they needed your guidance. So I agree. We have a lot to offer, right. A lot to offer about
even seasoned buyers,
right?
That have bought and sold in the past, and especially ones coming in from outside the area,
right.
And aren't familiar
outside the state.
Outside the state, aren't familiar with our noise and accident zones for our airports around here and stuff, and they end up buying in the wrong.
I'm looking for you two guys for an answer to a buyer who tells me I'll pay more for this house because the buyer's selling your commission.
I think the buyer doesn't understand, and that's where we come. One of our values is knowledge, is teaching the buyer about the process of buying a home.
Right.
And if you get that kind of objection, you know right away that they're probably getting their information from Zillow or Trulia, and they just don't understand the process. Why did we come up with buyer broker years ago?
Yeah, because
in the state of Virginia, the buying agent represents the seller unless there's an agreement.
That was the old fashioned. Everybody represented the seller.
Nobody represented the buyer.
Right, and the buyer started sitting there going, "Hold on for a second. Where does the seller get the money from to pay the realtors their fee at closing?
Out of your buyer's pocket.
Out of your pocket. So you should have representation."
Yeah, but
the listing agreement protects you, though, because what the buyers don't realize that are stating that is the agent has already signed agreement with that seller that he will pay 6%, 5%, whatever they're doing, to the firm, and then if there's another firm on the other side, that they will give half of that or so much. So that agent doesn't really have to agree to give up that other side.
Right.
So it's really a matter of what the agent decides they're going to do.
I tell the clients who when I'm speaking to them, they aren't clients yet. But what I tell them is my job is to protect your financial best interests.
Are you talking about buyer client or seller client? A buyer client.
This is all buyer oriented because there are these things in the back of people's minds. And one of the things I've had people say to me, well, I'm paying more because you're representing me. Factually, that seller has already committed to a certain percentage or dollar amount that he's going to pay his realtor and any cooperating broker.
Correct.
So
and that's done at the time of listing.
Yeah.
So that issue isn't right. It has nothing to do with it. And that's where it's an indication that one of our jobs is to educate our buyers. It doesn't matter if it's a first-time home buyer or they've bought 10 houses and because they've been in the military and have moved all over the place. Educate them on the process, so when they get home at night, they don't go, what are we doing? What did we just do?
The other objections that I've heard is one, I've bought houses before and I didn't need a realtor. Everything worked out okay. And how do you respond to that? Do you ask them what state, how long ago, how expensive?
Do you know this area?
Yeah. What if it did it out of state? For instance, if you go to New York, The realtors don't write the contract. They write letters of intent, and then the closing attorney writes the actual final contract.
Well, it's interesting. If a buyer is telling you that,
the other agent probably did all the work.
Well, here's my concern. I'm going, if the buyer is telling me that, you kind of as a seasoned agent are going, well, then why are you talking to me? If you're so good at buying your own homes, we shouldn't be having this discussion at all. They're coming because they know that we are the source of knowledge. We're the source of the listings. We get the first. When they come up, bang, we've got them. That's why they're talking to us to begin with.
I understand. All I'm getting you in trying to get this conversation going is these are things that I have heard. And I've in my career, if somebody is bound and determined to ignore the reality of how he can be assisted in the process by somebody like me as his agent at no cost to him, then so be it. And I'll shake his hand. We'll remain friends. And I've seen people buy houses, and then I have had them call me 3 months later and say, "What can we do about this?" And I say, "Why we, Kimosabe? I'm sorry.
You say the books are closed.
Yeah,
well,
the books are closed.
or you go, well,
that's your
you should go
puppy.
talk to your realtor. We didn't use a realtor.
Okay.
Well, I'm sorry I can't help you. Now you need to talk to your attorney.
Right.
You can say, well, I can sell it
You
for
know,
you, though.
and stuff. So it's
I'll sell it.
Folks, I hope you're getting this. We're talking as though we were sitting in a booth at a very quiet bar as real estate agents discussing what we've heard people say and objecting to our services. I love the whole process. I've had this. How do you answer this, guys? I know exactly what I want, and I'll keep looking until I find it. And today, there's a reality there because they can go to Zillow and Trulia and Realtor.com, and they can look at all these things, and they can call up somebody and ask, "Gee, we'd like to look at this house."
that tended to be more realistic back during the first boom when things were popping, and you saw a lot of for sale by owners.
Right.
It's when the for sale by owner magazine came out.
Oh, yeah.
And all this kind of stuff and everything. Now, we're not hearing that much because the inventory's down. When you did the numbers earlier in the show, that first number is not the properties that are available. A lot of those are already under contract. So buyers are having a harder time finding the properties and are coming to realtors going, because by the time they see it on Zillow or Trulia, it's too late.
If it's a good property, it's all right.
Well,
It's too right.
And I think our expectations, because of, my sister always says, you showed those people more than 3 houses? Well, they don't do that on Love It or List It. I mean, everybody's expectations are so high, they want the perfect house.
Yeah.
So right now we're, and so everybody wants, for $350, they want that, 1,800 square foot home, 4 bedrooms, garage, brand new granite countertops, the LTV tile throughout the entire home. So everybody just expects so much right now.
And quite honestly, in advising my clients, I try to have them visit other houses. I take them out and let's go see an open house, or let's go see a model, see what your competition's like, so that you can set a price that's realistic. At the same time, my responsibility is to guide you toward making good financial decisions in the real estate business. Same thing with buyers.
And the other thing is reminding often on, and I know you guys have experienced this, especially on first-time home buyers, you often get the question about, when do we pay you? Mm-hmm. Because the mentality is, well, you've got the sellers over here, and but we're going to have to pay our realtor. And so sometimes that keeps them from employing the services of a realtor because they don't understand how the process works that Kim hit on earlier. Is that's already taken care of on a separate contract with the seller. The seller's paying the fees. You don't pay us anything. And often the eyes light up and go, as part of the education process for the buyers.
Some states are trying to change that where the buyers would pay the buyer's agent.
Well, I know I've done a number of commercial transactions, smaller commercial transactions. I'm not a commercial realtor, but they kind of dropped in my lap because I've had experience as an investor. And in many of those instances, the buyer pays
very different.
The agent. It's very different. And it's how you write the contract. I've written an offer where the seller is actually paying me and not the buyer.
And I think in property management, a lot of times, you'll hire an agent to show you properties. That's kind of common in a lot of areas.
All right, and now we have to segue out of this conversation into the fact that we're going to station break. You're listening to the Real Estate PB&J Hour with Paul Fuqua, Kim Pimento, and Bob Freck, live on MoneyTalk1310.com or 1310 AM, 109.9 FM. If you have questions, call us at 757-497-1310 or contact me at paulfuquarealtor.com. See you in a bit. We'll continue our discussion.
Now back to the Real Estate PB&J Hour on Money Talk 1310 and 100.9 FM. Rosenwomble Realtor Paul Fuqua gives you the fundamentals of real estate selling, buying, owning, and improving your home.
Welcome back. This is Paul Fuqua. I hope you're enjoying your drive home, or you're comfortably ensconced in the bowels of your home and at the computer, or wherever you're listening to our show. We welcome you. I'm Paul Fuqua. I'm here in the studio with Kim Pimento, Bob Freck, and of course the phenomenal Dino Franza, who is our producer. He is prepared to take your phone calls if you call in at 497-1310. That's 757-497-1310. We were discussing objections to employing a agent as your buyer's agent. And one of the things we discussed while we were off the air during the break is that there's no reason, according to some people who've called us in the past as potential buyers and said, well, the real estate agent who has the listing, the guy whose name is on the sign, he can help me. I really don't need somebody else. How do you respond to that?
And a little twist on that, well, I just call the name on the sign.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, okay. I mean, you acknowledge what they're doing.
Right.
And stuff, and then you look at him and go, well, you do understand that name, that agent on the sign represents the seller only.
And cannot represent you.
Right, and is obligated by contract that they have signed with the seller to get the seller the highest and best price in the least amount of time with the least amount of inconvenience to the seller.
Right.
So when you go in and listen, everybody in this room has been a listing agent, so it's not like we're only buyer's agents. That's what we're employed to do. So when you get a buyer that calls you on a signed call and they say, is the seller negotiable? My answer to that is always, well, yes, the seller will always take more. Why? Because
what do you say to that if they ask you?
I said, I don't know.
I always tell them to take more because I've been hired by that seller to get them the highest and best price.
I always tell them, look, it's real estate. And real estate is the last great barter industry. If you want to make an offer, I will present it. I can't tell you whether or not a seller will take it. He has several options. He can.
What do you think I should offer? Well, I'm going to come back and go, well, I think you should go above list price.
What you're willing to pay for it.
No, not for me. Not if I'm the listing agent.
Right.
Representing my seller, I'm going to come back and say, well, I think you should
full
go
price.
in. I think you should go in at least full price. If you really want the property, I think you should go in above full price and not ask for any closing costs.
Right.
And an agent bonus would be nice too.
So buyers that are out there listening to this right now, they should be running to find themselves a buyer's agent.
Right.
Okay, that should be enough to hear.
Let's talk about one of the issues, and we don't have a lot of time. We have like 10 minutes, but one of the values of an agent, a buyer's agent, is helping you assess the value in the house that you're looking at. And I know, Kim, you have this wonderful sheet that you and Karen Gaskins, I think, compiled up, and how to price property.
Best brains in real estate.
How to price property with adjustments. For instance, how many square feet does the house have? What's an adjustment if you compare it to something else in the neighborhood? That's something an appraiser looks. What is the adjustment? Is it if the house is listed at $200 a foot and you've got a house right down the road that's 200 feet larger, is that $4,000 difference in price?
Well, no, because I think it depends on what's inside that square footage you're talking about. Now, I think if it was just a similar home, that's why you usually don't use price per square foot in resale. You use it in new construction, use it in commercial. but not so much in resale.
Isn't price per foot though the basic that underlies all of the pricing? You start out with that.
Yeah, I guess you could. Yeah, price per square foot. But when you do that, do you just divide the sales price by the number of square feet?
Well,
because a bathroom's worth a lot much. So you have a 10 by 10 area. A bathroom's going to be worth more than that 10 by 10 area.
If I'm going into a neighborhood that's consistent, let's say Courthouse Estates, where you had 7 or 8 different models, it's very easy. You pull up that model, what the bedroom count is, what the bathroom count. There've been 32 homes sold in the past 12 months of that size. What's the price per foot? And then what was the low? What was the average? What was the high?
And this is what you're sharing most of the time with your seller on how to price it.
I share this with the buyers, though. It's important to show, I think, so a buyer knows where the house is priced. And if they can see from what the CMA, the comparative market analysis for that neighborhood, what it is, then they have a legitimate base upon which to make an offer.
Well, and remember, you're working as a team.
Yes.
The buyer and the buyer's agent are working as a team with the goal. Now we've flipped hats as the buyer's agent of getting your buyer
the best deal,
the best deal, the lowest price with the least amount of inconvenience with and that kind of stuff.
Sometimes it's not just the lowest price. Sometimes it's maybe a better price, but other elements that come back in.
And keeping in mind
closing
that
costs.
Your buyer says, "I want to buy this house," so kind of the overriding criteria is, okay, let me ask you this question. We can go in below list price. If you don't get the house and you get beat by $10,000, $20,000, is that okay with you? And that answer is really important. That's your motivation on the buyer side. Like we have to judge motivation on the seller side for selling. Because if your buyer wants that house, then sometimes you have to construct the offer. You don't want your buyer paying too much, but you want your buyer to be at the closing table on that house.
Well, you're talking about the market we're just kind of in and just came out of, correct? When you pay over?
That's a good point because it varies based on market. When we had the first boom, you didn't care about square footage. You didn't care about any of that kind of stuff. The only way you could get a house was to go in and offer above list price and guarantee it in cash at closing and prove that you had the cash.
And
you didn't
take
care
it
anything
as
about
is in many instances.
Yeah.
Right.
So the market has a big
elements,
impact.
Kim, do you think are critical in this? The age? I mean,
I think the age, I think only if you really think that there's a huge way and it's been maintained. But now you're not going to compare a house in Ghent to a house in a neighborhood. I mean, you're going to have to stay with kind of the basic style. And I do agree with you. You figure out kind of what the square foot, price per square foot. But you also will need to add for, a bathroom's going to give. Okay, so you have 2 houses, same square footage, about the same thing on the inside, but one's got a better bathroom. That would give it some value. People will pay for an extra bedroom.
How about a new roof?
No. What house do you know that doesn't have a roof? Unless it's tile,
right,
or tin,
right,
or aluminum, or what are they putting on the houses?
And sometimes we can look at a roof and go, okay, this thing's getting pretty rough, and often that's where your property inspector, your home inspector, is going to come in on a property inspection and make
an appraiser. If it's
you hope you don't get to that point. You hope that before you ever get to the appraisal, you've handled any issues on things like the roof. But if you have 2 houses side by side in Ghent, similar style, similar size, 3 stories, and you're going, well, is the pricing still? And one is priced $100,000 more than one sitting right next door.
Okay, justify that pricing for me based on the sheet that we have here. You got 2 houses, basically same format, basically same age, same neighborhood, but one is $100,000 more than the other.
Kitchen's been upgraded, bathrooms have been upgraded, flooring's been upgraded,
nice
heating air's
dry
been
basement,
upgraded.
Easy in Ghent. If you have a nice dry basement and a foundation,
new roof. They've checked all the blocks and stuff.
Yeah.
So now you have to go back to your buyer and go, well, are you okay with a fixer-upper? Are you okay with doing the work and saving the money on the other side?
And people will pay for that.
Yeah. So and if they're both on the market, you take them to the one that's $100,000 more, so they can see the end. Some buyers okay with that.
Should the buyer look at that redone house before or after they see the other house?
Well, probably they wanted to see that one first anyway.
Because of price?
Assuming that they can afford the higher priced one, because you don't want to.
We're making that assumption.
Yes,
I don't show houses to people that can't afford the houses.
Correct.
That's why
so
it's important.
You take them and show them the one that's been redone, and you go, this one's move in, this is turnkey. Let's go look next door. And depending on your buyer's experience and level, they may go into the one next door and go, I'm good with this because I can do.
Well, what's the most important thing in your career, or that you know of, that buyers would want in a house? I know the bedroom count, and I know they want some kind of a backyard, and they don't want it falling down. But what's the thing that really differentiates any house from the house?
I think flooring. They love that new luxury vinyl tile, or the
LVP.
LVP.
I think it's less. I think it's feel.
Really?
Kitchen.
I think it comes down to feel.
You mean
all
like
three
floor
of us
plan?
here. No, when they walk, all three of us here have been. We know when the buyer has found the right house.
Yeah, bingo.
When they start talking about this feels good, we could put our furniture over. All of a sudden, they've kind of forgotten about the fancy kitchen next door and all, because this one makes them feel good, like it's going to be a home.
It's our responsibility to them, though, to point that out.
Yes, correct. And we're showing them the difference. These are all values of having a buyer agent with you, representing you when you walk into houses.
Yeah, but how many people have you taken around for a long time looking at this one? They'll tell you what they want, and then they buy something totally
I have a story. Wonderful lady. She was a managing partner of an international firm. They were moving here, and she said this is what she wanted. She gave me 2 pages, single-space typewritten, of what she didn't want in the house. And she would fly in with her husband. They'd spend 3 days. We'd look at 6 houses a day, never more. We'd go to dinner. The next day, so we always looked at 18. She never found one she liked. Never found one that just rang her chimes, until I took her to one in Church Point that had everything that she said she didn't want. And I did it just because I liked the house.
Yes.
And I'd watch her, and we walked through the front door, and she went, "We're buying this
Correct.
house."
Because you know why? It felt good. She went in and it clicked on her.
I have no idea why she bought
I
that
had a
house.
buyer that went in and said they hated walking in the front door and having a stairway to the second floor inside the front door.
Yeah, a lot of people. I don't like
Guess
that.
what
though,
they
really.
ended up buying?
Buy a house just like
Not
that.
only was there a stairway right inside the front door, but it had a sunken living room. So you not only walked into a stairway, but if you didn't look where you were going and took a step to the right, you stumbled into the living room. And okay, but they loved it. They loved the house.
Yeah, it's an emotional buy. Can we agree on that?
Buying is emotional.
And it's tempered by the size
selling
of your
is
wallet.
emotional too.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, selling is letting go of memories. That's a little easier. You can snip that.
No, not for some
we
people.
raised
Paul.
our
I think
kids
it's
in these
hard.
schools.
Huh?
What's wrong with these schools? We raised our kids in these schools.
Yeah, yeah, it's emotional. What I love is when the buyers have that feel, and you're going, oh, okay, and you're out in the front yard, and the neighbor tells them something like, yeah, watch out for the golf balls. You're going, what? Where did you come from?
But you said the magic word when the buyers have that feeling.
Yeah.
And we've been in the business long enough. You know when something's
I watch
clicked.
the shoulders.
Well,
Yes.
houses have feels.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is, when my listings, we're doing it. There's a showing scheduled they know about. They've got 2 hours, or there's an open house. Bake me some cookies. Make me a cake. Get that grandma lives here smell, and get rid of the dog and cat smell.
And don't cover it up with the little plug-in areas.
Yeah, that doesn't
my
work.
God, that's a giveaway.
Potpourri, that
Yes.
makes me sick to my stomach. I've become allergic to that.
Yeah.
You like potpourri? Some people
No.
do. Oh, okay. That and then the spray stuff.
You don't want to hide it.
Try to cover up the wet dog smell.
Yeah. Well, in my house, that's going to be tough to do, especially over the coming weekend. All right, now. Well, I want to come in here. How important is the heating system? We know if it's recent, that's important, but the heating and air conditioning, is that
Very, very much.
That's a big
that
ticket
it's
item.
recent, or that it's a geothermal or
No, I just think that it's
furnace,
It's
gas
updated. It
burning?
works really well. It doesn't need to be replaced immediately.
Okay.
And if it's oil, people, oil gets a bad rap.
It's great. It's actually more efficient than anything
people,
else we use.
They just turn their noses up to oil.
I couldn't rent our rental house that we have because it had oil. The renters moved out because of the fluctuation of oil up and down. I finally switched it over to natural gas. Virginia Natural Gas came in and put the gas line in for free. Mm-hmm. They'll do that if you put a gas-fired furnace in the house. Mm-hmm. Zero to put the gas line in. Never had a problem, but it was a nightmare because the first thing they would see when they drove up to the house was the oil tank. It's like seeing the window air conditioners.
Supposed to bury
well, it is expensive to fill it up.
It is.
The one
but it's
chunk
like,
of change.
how often do you fill it up? It's like, and it's right now
twice a year. I think
twice a year, so it's like $400 to $500.
More than twice a year because I have a house I live in that now is oil.
Oh, okay.
How many times do you do it?
How many times a year do you do it? We're down to what, 2 minutes?
When we switched from our
2 minutes
the oil boiler heating our hot water.
We're running out of time here, guys.
Twice a year with the hot water.
How much is it every time you fill that up?
800 plus.
See, that's a bunch of change.
That's a big number.
All right,
and if you're a tenant, that's a big number.
We're coming to the end of the show. All right, I've enjoyed it. I've laughed a little bit.
I love Paul's vocabulary. They're encroached in the bowels of their home.
Ensconced.
When he says ensconced, I go like, oh my god.
Hey, I used to read a lot. Now I can't read at all. Anyway, this is Paul Fuqua. I'm here with Kim Pimento and Bob Freck. We've enjoyed going out on the airwaves, throwing this palaver at you. Hopefully, you like that word?
Yes, that was good. That was, that's an allowed word,
palaver. Anyway, we've enjoyed our afternoon. Hope you have a great weekend, that you don't drown and that Ian doesn't reach out and grab you. Please tune in again next week. This is the Real Estate PB&J Hour. You can go to our website at YouTube, the PB&J Hour, Real Estate PB&J Hour, and you'll see this show and the three of us. You can listen to us again. Until next week, it's Paul Fuqua, Bob Freck, Kim Pimento. Thank you very much for listening.
Have a good week.